Hello, everyone. My presentation for today is Queering the Divine, Gender and Sexual Fluidity in Indian Mythology. These are my academic information. Now, as you know, mythology is a very central part of Indian culture, and people are much attached to it. They would get offended if you call their mythologies mythology. So we see that people are very connected to it, and there are many myths and these stories that describe gender fluidity in Indian mythology, and yet people often we find that they have homophobic attitudes towards these communities. They refuse to accept that even their myths have the incidence of this. So today I'm going to explore that in my presentation. As Ritesh Kumar Singh says in his article, that ancient Indian texts consisted over 50 Sanskrit, Prakrit, and Tamil words describing different non-heterosexual identities. So from this we understand that there was an acceptance towards these communities, which later shifted to discrimination due to misinterpretation and changing social attitudes. Most of the time nowadays, people would consider these sexual identities as originating from the Western ideas. But we can see them in Indian mythology as well, because Indian mythology viewed gender fluidity as natural and divine and not something immoral. And religious text shows acceptance of Tritya Prakriti. So, my research question for today is, how do the narratives of Shikhandini, Ardhanarishwar, and Mohini in Indian mythology challenge the binary understandings of gender and sexuality, and what do they reveal about the fluidity of identity in cultural and religious contexts? My hypothesis is that these stories in Indian mythology subvert binary frameworks of gender and sexuality, and they offer a nuanced understanding of identity as fluid and performative. These narratives not only reflect the acceptance of diverse identities in ancient Indian culture, but also provide a critical lens for contemporary discussion on queer identities in religious and cultural context. Let me start my presentation with a little introduction to queer theories. So it basically encompasses gay and lesbian studies, and in the beginning, the term queer was a derogatory in its nature, but it was reclaimed in the 1990s. Queer theory examines sexual identity, orientation, and activities, and it challenges the traditional norms. Now, it emerged from liberation movement of 1960s and 70s, and it runs parallel to African American and feminist movements. Initially, there were separate gay and lesbian movements, but then they were unified under queer recognition of shared history and aims. Queer theory questions the binary oppositions of male and female, heterosexual and homosexual, and it challenges privilege and power structure. And they examine how these categories are culturally constructed. These are a few key theorists. Now, one concept that I have explored much in my presentation, so I would like to give you a little background on that, which is gender performativity. So, this concept is given by Judith Butler in her book Gender Trouble. And this theory challenges traditional notion of gender as fixed, biological, or inherent in characteristic. So Judith Butler says that the gender is not something fixed or biological or something you are born with. Gender is more like a performance. It is how you are raised. And you are shaped by social norms and acceptance expectations. If you see from childhood, boys are told that you should not cry, you should behave in a manly manner. There are these standards for them, and the same goes for women. They have been told that you should not argue, you should not fight, you should behave yourself. So we see that when people are raised like these, it is no doubt that they would behave like it. So Judith Butler says that gender is an act and not an essence. So if people it is basically a repetition. These performances, people have to repeat these performances again and again, and they are, as I said, constructed through social norms. And because it is such a long standing tradition, it gives the illusion of naturalness, when in reality it is not that. Now I'd like to begin with the first story, which is of Shikhandini, the transgender warrior. Before I begin with this, I'd like to tell you more about transgender. So there are two sections in that. One is trans women. So when men reject masculinity and consider themselves female, so that is trans women. And one other one is trans men. So when women reject femininity and consider themselves a man. So in Mahabharata, we see Shikhandini, who is the daughter of King Drupad and Panchal, Drupad of Panchal, and she was born a woman, but brought up as a man. And from the beginning, her father had this desire that she will kill Bhishma. So he was a great warrior. So she was trained in turn, trained like that, like a great warrior. Deodat Patnaik in his novel Shikhandi and Other Queer Tales They Don't Tell You tells this. The girl named Shikhandi was taught all the skills reserved for men. She grew up believing she was a warrior, and she was even given a wife. There is another quote that says, "For the girl thought like a man and felt like a man and had always been treated as a man, but that body of hers was certainly not a man's." So here we see gender as a performance because she was trained like a warrior from the beginning and she was treated like a man, so she felt like a man. And we see that Shikhandini is often misrepresented in our tales, and many times she is considered like a eunuch or a trans woman. And these misinterpretation reflect societal bias against trans men. And what are these reasons for misinterpretation? So they are lack of awareness about trans men, societal reluctance to acknowledge women taking on men role, and another is patriarchal bias in the storytelling. Another story I would like to explore is Ardhanarishwar. Ardhanarishwar is basically a composite deity in Hindu mythology, and it represents the union of Shiva and Parvati, which is masculine and feminine. The deity is depicted as half male and half female. You can see from the picture here, and it is divided vertically, and it symbolizes the inseparability of masculine and feminine energies. So Ardhanarishwar transcends the binary classification of male and female, and it symbolizes the spectrum of gender identities. And Ardhanarishwar aligns with the idea in queer theory that gender is fluid and cannot be confined in rigid categories. Ardhanarishwar can be viewed as a representation of non-binary or gender queer identities, as it embodies both and transcends them simultaneously. The last story we want to explore today is of the Mohini, the enchantress. Mohini is basically the female avatar of Vishnu and known for her enchanting beauty and ability to deceive. We see that Vishnu assumes the role of Mohini whenever he feels that he would not be able to achieve a certain task in his male form. So the most remembered story is that when he distracts the demons, so he cannot do that as Vishnu, so he transforms himself into Mohini. Two very famous, another famous stories of Mohini is marriage between Mohini and Shiva. This happened when after the Samudra Manthan, we find this story, and from this relationship, there are even stories in the traditions that from this relationship came the god Ayyappan. And there is another story is of marriage between Mohini and Arvan. So Arvan is basically a warrior from Mahabharata, and he was going to die the next day. So his last wish was to get married, but no woman agreed to marry him because his death was like written that okay, he's surely going to die tomorrow. So Krishna transforms himself into Mohini and gets married to him. So these stories show that there was this acceptance in Indian mythology. It also shows that Mohini's femininity we see is not inherent; it is performed for specific purposes. And these stories between the marriage of Mohini and others, they challenge the rigid heterosexual framework and normalize fluid expression of desire in mythology. So, to conclude, these mythological narratives challenge rigid binary understanding of gender and sexuality. And these stories reveal that ancient Indian mythology was not only inclusive, but also celebrated fluid and transformative identities. To conclude my presentation, I would say that by revisiting these stories through a queer theoretical lens, we not only reclaim the inclusive essence of Indian mythology, but also highlight its relevance in contemporary LGBTQ discourses. And ultimately, these myths serve as a powerful tool to question modern day binaries and advocate for the acceptance of diverse identities in cultural and social spaces. These are my references, and thank you. Now, if you have any questions.
Umi, are there any other examples in Indian mythology that reflect queer theory, queer themes or challenge gender?
Yes, there are many actually, but one that I can think of right now is Arjun's transformation to Brinhalla. And there is this story that they have to go live in exile and in hiding. So Arjun transforms himself into a woman, and many stories say that he actually became a eunuch. So there are that. There is another story of cross dressing that is not widely acknowledged, is of Bhim, and that when he went to kill Kichak, he cross dressed and he dressed like a woman, and then he killed Kichak. So we see stories like that in our myths.
Yes, do you think that these queer mythological characters have any real influence on Indian society's acceptance of these queer peoples?
Okay, so when people are forced to accept them, then they would give examples from their myths that, okay, we have that, we are an inclusive culture, we have this in our myths. But in reality, people are not accepting these communities. And I think that is the ground reality, that even after having so many stories, and people are very quick to accept other things. If you see the example of, we have this Ravan had this Pushpak Viman. So people would run to say that Indians were the first one to discover airplanes. But they would not do the same about these myths. In fact, they would blame it on Western society, that all of this has increased because of Western influences in that manner. So, yeah, I would say that it does not really have acceptance from Indian society. Yes, thank you.